Hey there, welcome to our Feast Lunar New Year special workshop. Today we will make rice paper rolls. And one great thing about these in particular is that they can have any filling that you like. So if you like shrimp or pork or vegetarian fillings, that's great. The version that I'm going to show you today has no wheat, so it's gluten-free as well. Now we're going to use a mixture of rice flour and tapioca starch. You can buy the flour for these rice rolls at an Asian market. It's called rice noodle roll flour. It typically does have wheat flour in it though, so keep an eye out. It may just say starch and you never really know. So I just like to know the starch because I'm a little sensitive to wheat myself. So could not be more simple. And let me show you what I have here queued up for us on the deck. These will be our ingredients. So I've got white rice flour. I'm using the Bob's Red Mill tapioca starch from my local Ranch 99. I've got a half teaspoon of sugar already in my bowl. Oh, sorry, not sugar, salt. And a cup and a half of water ready to go. So I'm going to measure, this actually is a little bit easier to measure by weight than with a standard volumetric measuring cup, but I know a lot of people are still not accustomed to measuring by weight. So I have scaled into the measuring cup. So it's about 3/4 cup of rice flour, which is, I put that in the recipe. I believe it's about 135 grams, and then 1/3 of a cup of tapioca starch. And of course, it's always more accurate to weigh because when we pack into our measuring cups, we get, sort of different volumes from time to time. I just move these out of the way. They are very floury and they will kind of get all over your kitchen, which is fine. It's just flour. I'm going to pour in my cup and a half of water. It's just room temperature filtered water, and give it a nice stir. Now, it is really a great idea if you have the time to allow this batter, as I'm going to call it from now on, to sit for at least a half an hour. So if you're giving it about a half an hour to sit, then the starches will be fully hydrated and the texture of the rice roll will actually be nicer. So I'm mixing this one up now to show you. I've got one that I made a little bit before I started, so that's what I'll use in my pan. So while this sits, let's make the dipping sauce. And then I'm going to use some shrimp today. I'll show you how I am going to season my shrimp. And then I'll show you the equipment that I'm going to use just to cook mine. I don't have the fancy drawer steamer that you might see at a Cantonese restaurant for steaming these. And that's fine. We can make do with a lot of stuff. So here I have my sauce recipe. I'm going to put it into this little pitcher, which is easy to pour. I'm going to use about 2 tablespoons maybe of soy sauce. Now, there are many, many recipes for the dipping sauce or the serving sauce for these rice rolls. Sometimes it's just as simple as using a dark Chinese style soy sauce, adding a little bit more sugar to it. I like a little bit more body to mine. If this is too thick for you, you can add a little bit of water just to dilute it up a little bit. So I've got 3 tablespoons of oyster sauce and 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. And I'm using Kikkoman. I'm not using the Chinese light style. So, the Chinese light soy sauce is a little saltier, it's thinner, and it's lighter in color. It's really more for salty flavor. And the Chinese dark soy sauce is a little bit thicker, it's a little sweeter, and it's great for adding color. So that's the difference if you're curious. And then, although this is not traditional Cantonese, I like a little bit of spice in mine. So I have some chili crisp, and I'm just gonna add a little bit of chili oil to mine. I like the way it looks on the white rice paper roll, and I just happen to like a little bit of spice in mine. So I'm going to stir that up, and that is all ready to go. All right, so here's what I'll be using to steam my rice paper rolls. Let me put this plate out of the way. So I have just a square cake pan. I have a brush for oiling it. I'm going to use a little bit of oil. I think I was going to put a little bit of oil in the batter, but I'll do that in a minute. And I also have this is a cake batter scraper. You could use any kind of pancake turner. It's really great if it's kind of wide so that you can get all through the pan. You can use a round pan if you don't have a square one. That's not a problem. A rectangle that's a little bit smaller. This is very flexible. You can even do this steaming on a plate like the one I had out there. The advantage of using a metal container is that once we take this out of the steamer, it will cool down a little faster, where a china plate stays a little warmer. And you'll see that it's a little easier to roll our rice roll when it's cooled off a little bit. So this is, not fancy. It's what I got. Let me grab my oil. A little easier to oil over here. This is one of my favorite dim sum dishes. And very often when I go to dim sum, if they're not pushing the carts around, this is one of the items that takes a little bit longer to prepare. And I think it's because they're doing them to order and the cooks are always busy in the kitchen. It's very important to oil this pan, otherwise your rice noodle batter will stick for sure. So now back here, I have this is how I'm going to steam it. This is just a wok. You can use a skillet or any other kind of, anything that will fit your pan. So the only key thing is here, the pan that you'll make the noodles in needs to fit inside the wok. And I have put in just a little steamer insert that came with one of my pots. You could use little balls of aluminum foil, anything to keep the pan off the surface of the steaming wok. And all we have to do, and you can steam so many different things this way. You can steam all kinds of things. You just put them on a plate, put them in a steamer just like this. So I'll turn the burner on high just to get that water up to a boil. And my stove is pretty fast, so this is not going to take very long. And my pan actually sits in there sort of nicely without this. So I'm just going to omit that for now. One less thing for me to worry about. Okay, so while that heats up, let's just come back over here for a second. I want to show you what I'm going to do for the shrimp. So I have I'll be putting a little bit of shrimp in mine and a little bit of green onion because that's how I like it. So to pre-season my shrimp, which I have, these came frozen, they're kind of small. You want them small so that they steam in the same time as your rice rolls. A little sprinkle of sesame oil. And I like a little white pepper. I'm just going to mix those up with my fingers. And I'm going to bring them over to the stove with me so that they're ready to go. You can use, if you have a char siu, which is the red spiced barbecued Chinese pork, you could slice some of that thinly. You could use raw ground meat that you put in. There are many, many, many kinds of fillings that you can use for these rice rolls. So let's go back and take a look at the stove. You can see now that the water is starting to steam in there. I do want to call to your attention, I'm going to be lifting this pan out using tongs. You don't want to touch it. And I've got a hot pad ready. You do not want to steam yourself. You just want to steam the roll. So when it's ready to come out, I'll do this and move it back to the other cutting board. But let me show you for now. So the water is simmering. It's ready to go here. I have my batter, and one of the things that's really important to do is re-stir this every time you put some down on the pan, because the starch will settle in the bowl. So we want to just make sure it's remixed up together. And it has a very light flowing texture like milk. It's not like a traditional batter. And so I'm going to put about 1.5 ladles in my experience works about for this pan. And then I'm going to use my tongs and try to get that to sit evenly in the pan. May not happen. Once the pan gets hot enough, some of the batter will cook and stick. And then when I move it, it's a little bit like cooking a crepe. Just need to move it around a little bit. All right, now it is sticking. I'm going to add, I like a lot of these. I love the green onions on mine. And I'm going to put my shrimp in a row like this, because I'll roll the rice roll from this side to that side, and that way they'll be all in a even line. So you can probably see if I turn this a little bit, and it does not matter that there's a little empty space here. That's not going to be a problem. This area is the thinnest. That's probably a little bit better. That's all right. And we'll just cover that up for a second. So this can take up to 2 or 3 minutes to steam. And as you can see, the steamer lid of this isn't covering the whole wok, which is fine. Really what I wanted to do is cover the size of the pan so that the steam stays in the pan. The tricky part is to get your shrimp, if you have raw ingredients like ground beef or shrimp, to get that to cook at the same time as the noodle. So we don't want to overcook the noodle and we don't want to undercook the shrimp. So maybe when you're trying your first couple, it might be good to do a just a vegetarian one with some green onions and maybe some fried shallots. I love to buy the fried shallots already done at the Asian grocery store. Then you can kind of get a sense for how long it takes your rice noodle to cook. All right, let's take a peek. Ooh, that's looking good. So what I'm looking for is, that's pretty hot, so I'm going to point with my tongs. The rice batter is becoming translucent all over and it's starting to bubble up. So if you've ever made homemade tortillas, you know that a bubble in the dough indicates that the inside is beginning to cook, which is exactly what we want. And also my shrimp are becoming opaque. They're no longer as transparent. Let's give it about another 30 seconds. So if you like this idea, you know, we have a lot of great dim sum classes in the Feast catalog, some delicious dumplings. One of my favorite things are the scallion pancakes. So there is a class that we can do with both scallion pancakes and dumplings in about 2 hours, believe it or not. And you can freeze some of those and have them for later. So you could do a whole Sunday dim sum for yourself, whether it's Lunar New Year or not. And put exactly in it what you want. That way you'll know exactly what you're getting. All right, look at that. I think that's done. These shrimp are a little underdone, but by the time I roll the hot noodle on top of them, they're going to be perfect. So I'm going to turn the steamer off for a second and bring this over to the other camera to show you what's going on. All right, take a look at that. We have these lightly steamed shrimp. I've got the rice noodle. It is actually a little easier to remove this from the pan if you just wait, 10, 15 seconds. It doesn't have to come out immediately. And also that allows everything to finish cooking if you think the shrimp. Now, I really do not like my shrimp overcooked. I want to make sure that I do not ruin them by overcooking them. So with my my turner here, I'm going to loosen the edge of this side of the rice noodle. And we'll see how well it turns. Oh, perfect. Look at that. And, you know, we are not a restaurant, so nobody's expecting these to all come out perfectly. So always have patience with yourself as you try to learn these new skills. So I'm going to roll that over. There we go. So now I've rolled it all together and I'm going to put it out on a plate. Now you can see these are kind of one by one. You can keep these warm in the oven at a very low heat. You can refrigerate them and re-steam them later if you need to, if you want to make them ahead of time. Put it over there. My shrimp fell out. That's okay. Now I know what I've got there. It's a little broken, but again, that's fine. You know, like pancakes, when you make them, the first one sometimes sticks a little bit because the pan isn't exactly ready. Let's put a little bit of that sauce on and try it. I'm going to stir it up. It is a little thick. So when I look at the sauce, I'm going to put I might have gotten a little too much oyster sauce. You saw how carefully I measured that. I just eyeballed it. A little bit of sauce on there. And then we just pick it up. It's a little hot. I like to wait a second, but pick it up like that. So good. I just love the crunch of the scallions in there. And the texture of the rice noodle is just great. So there you have it. dim sum favorites, no special equipment needed. And really, they're pretty fast too. My one big tip for you is let your batter rest for about a half an hour before you start this. Try the first one, see how it works out, and then keep going. All right, happy cooking, and we'll see you at the next time.